So I will just give a brief overview and a shkafa, and then we'll have some time to be more specific. How do we balance out being a professional, doing your job, providing for your family, learning Torah, and fulfilling your duties as a husband and as a father to children? And this seems to be a very daunting task, juggling all these important endeavors and trying to figure out how much resources, time, and energy we dedicate to each of these. So, the very first question on my list is, I really want to learn Torah in a way that's fulfilling and meaningful, but between work and being present for my wife and kids, I have very little time available. Could the Lord give me some chizuk for navigating this challenge? First yortzeit of my late wife, we had a big kenes under the title V'chayiten el liboy. Maybe some of you might have participated. And I spoke about Asmoda v'Torah, Kviyasitim l'Torah, and it was moved a few days later when an individual came to me with a sheet, and he said, this is my Seder Hayom from 6:30 in the morning when I get up to 11:15 when I go to sleep. And I wrote down exactly what I do throughout the day. Could the Rav find some more time? Because after what the Rav said, I want to learn somewhat more. And I go over that list, and I come home from Seder Beis and Koil 7 o'clock till 7:30. I spend some time with my wife, and then I go back to learning. And I said, this item I don't touch. This is sacrosanct. This is holy. I will not take off from that half hour when you come home and you ask your wife how was her day. Maybe we could snatch off a few minutes from breakfast, from dinner, from lunch, but we'll look for some minutes that we can add on, but I'm not going to touch this one. So we all face this challenge if you are a professional. You want to do your job properly, with integrity, and you want to do the best for your family and provide for your family, and that means being successful in your career. You want to be kavei itim l'Torah, and you want to be a father. So there's a machlokes Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai in Brochas Lamed Hey. How does one balance out? V'ogisa b'yoyim v'laylo. Very first perek in Divrei Nevi'im, Yeshua perek Aleph. What does that mean? Does it mean all day and all night, or does it mean some of the day and some of the night? Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai says it means all day and all night. Rabbi Shmuel asks, what about v'osafto degonecho? You need to harvest, you need to plow, you need to sow, what about v'osafto degonecho? Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai says, B'zman she'Yisrael oisen et zoyne shel mokem, there is no v'osafto degonecho. V'amdu zorim u'ra'u tzonchem. Others would come and they'll take care of your fields. And Rabbi Shmuel says, no. Haneg v'minig derech eretz. We are people, and we need to act like people act and provide for your families and your communities. And I wrote in Minchas Osher, this is not a machlokes in Hilchos Talmud Torah. It's a machlokes in Hilchos Derech Eretz. I assume Rabbi Shmuel was no less masmid than Rashbi. Not that I knew them both. But in Menuchas Tzadik Tes, there's an other machlokes Rabbi Shmuel and Rashbi. And there Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai says, Afilu lo kora elo kriya shema shachris v'arvis, kiyem v'ogisa b'yom v'laylo. That seems to be a very drastic contradiction. In Brochas he says, all day, all night. You don't go into your fields, others will come. And in Menuchas he says, Kis Meshachas v'Arvis. Rabbi Shmuel in Brochas says, Hanig ben menig derech eretz. And Menuchas, his nephew, asked him, could I learn Greek philosophy? And he responds, B'shor she'enoi lo yom v'lo layla. Because your day and night need to be dedicated, V'ogisa b'yom v'layla. So this seems to be a very drastic contradiction, both of Rabbi Shmuel and of Rabbi Shimon Yochai. So I say, both agree. Person needs to learn Torah as much as he can. The machlokes is Soimchem el hanes or ein soimchem el hanes. It's a machlokes in Hilchos Derech Eretz. Rabbi Shimon argues, if the entire nation, not individuals, if the entire nation would dedicate all its time and resources and energies to Torah, then miraculously we will need to do nothing else. And Rabbi Shmuel says, no. Va'amdu zora mer'ut soinchem is a dream. It's a utopian dream. It's not a program. As a program, v'osafta degonecha. So as individuals, how do we balance this out? There is no clear formula. No one could tell you exactly how many hours you need to spend on any of these three endeavors. It is about what is important to you. It's more about attitude than receiving a psak. What is extremely important is kviyas item l'Torah. I'll just share with you a geschmack vort. I don't even know whether it's a vort or a vertel, because a vort and a vertel are not exactly the same. They're two different definitions. The Pele Yoyetz was one of the great Balei Musa, the Beloza Papo. The Pele Yoyetz is a very well-known sefer. He has another sefer called Chesed Lavrom, and he writes this idea both in Pele Yoyetz and Chesed Lavrom. How important it is Kaviyas Itim LaTorah. First of all, he says, if you're Kaviyas Itim LaTorah, Kol Kavua Kamachatza Al Machatza. So a Kavua is like 50%. And the Gemara in Kedushin says, Rav Chesed Mate Klape Chesed. If a person has 50% schuyas, 50% chayvis, Kodesh Baruch Hu just gives him a pushover, the tipping point, and that is Chas de Shemayim. So if you kaveh etim l'Torah, it's machzah al machzah. If it's machzah al machzah, you have roiv, rubai kikuloi. So if you kaveh etim l'Torah, it is as you learn all day. It is a combination of three mamorah chazal. Is that a vort, a vertel? It definitely is not pshat. But it's about attitude. So what is extremely important is kviyas item l'Torah, preferably with chavrusa or participating in a shir. If you learn on your own, it just wouldn't work out. You'll always have very important things to do, especially balancing out family and parnasa. So what is extremely important is kviyas item l'Torah, either participating in a shir barabim or chavrusa. What to learn and how to learn is another item. So the gold standard we learned in yeshiva is iyun. So let me share with you just a few words about the yeshiva system. It is clear to any Talmud Chochem, ikar mitzvahs Talmud Torah lilmed al menas lasis. We are supposed to learn Torah lo das es aderech neilech bo ve'et ha'maaseh asher yasun. Ikar mitzvahs Talmud Torah is to learn halacha, Musar as well as halacha, because when we use the posuk, the phrase et haderech neilech bo ve'et ha'maaseh asher yasun, it is not only halachas, it is also avodas ukeil. But derech neilech bo means how to come closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, how to have feelings for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, how to live with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Iyun is not the right thing. The yeshiva system is geared to teach us how to learn. But if all life we will be trying to figure out how to learn, when will you finally learn? And learning means knowing halacha, knowing Musa. So I think it's a huge mistake for married people, working people, to spend most of their time on iyun. Most of the time needs to be dedicated to learn halacha, to learn Musa. And why is it so important to learn Gemara? Because Gemara is the basis for everything. Musa comes from Gemara, Hasidus comes from Gemara, Halacha comes from Gemara. When we talk about Torah Shebal Peh, essentially we mean Mishnah and Gemara. Everything else is included. But Torah Shebal Peh is Chazal. Chasimas HaTalmud is a milestone. It was a very significant transformation. And that is why this huge industry of Daf Yomi is important, because Gemara is the fundament. It's the basis. But I think it's very important for working Balabatim to learn halacha, to learn either Misra and Chassidus, just to rekindle your spirit and bring you closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But what is extremely important is Kviyas Item LaTorah. Is working Elechatchila or Ebediyeved? And this is also a very important question. My mother passed away 2 years ago. She was 93. She was an amazing woman in many ways, extremely intelligent, great machaneches. She also has a very keen sense of humor, and she used to say, I know why you guys write the ksuba in Aramaic, because you don't want us to know what's in there. But we do happen to know what's in there, and you promised, Anu Eflach v'Ezen v'Afanis, and you don't live up to your creed. You have no intention of fulfilling what you promised. She said that with a touch of humor, but working was never considered a b'diavad. It was what everyone did. For 2,000 years, it was what everyone did. There is one siman in Shulchan Aruch which actually should be taken out of the Shulchan Aruch, and that is siman Kuf Nun Zayin. After Ashkom Sodom B'Boiker and Birchas Shachar and Kriya Shema and Tefillah, and then there's a siman you learn after davening, and then there's a siman you go to work. Who goes to work? Who goes to work after breakfast? Nobody in this country goes to work. So why is that in the Shulchan Aruch? Should be taken out in our days. Working was never considered a b'diavad. If you didn't work, you died. If you didn't work, you starved. Everybody went to work. So there was a huge controversy in the days of the Rambam. The Rambam writes, it is a prohibition to make money from Torah. And nowhere in the Mishnah Torah says the Rambam used such harsh language as in that halacha, in Hilchos Talmud Torah, and Barichas Gedoylo, Mesechet Avos. So there's a Minchas Osha and Avos. There might be some on the table. That is the most recent sefer, and there's a very interesting discussion about the Rambam. The Rambam writes, Chileles Hashem, Mevazes HaTorah, Soiftor Melastem Es Abrias. Very harsh language. It was never considered a b'diavad. On the other hand, this generation brought such a blessing of Talmud Torah. And I think, contrary to what many people think, nobody planned it. Nobody planned it, neither the Chazon Ish nor anyone else. Nobody planned, and nobody decided that everybody's going to go to Koil. The one that bears responsibility for this phenomena is David Ben-Gurion. Nishmuse Eiden. And I think he got a lot of Olam Haba for bringing about the age of Koilalim. No Godel planned it. And I don't say this in a derogatory fashion. It just happened because in this country you couldn't go work. You needed to go to the army. And we didn't go to the army. And that is how the Koilel word developed. And it's a huge blessing. Never before did we have so many young people, true Talmidei Chachamim. I'll share with you an interesting phenomena. When you look at the vast world of Shalos Teshuvos, 50% is Orach Chaim, 30% is Yoredeya, the other 20% is divided between Even Ezra and Choshen Mishpat. Choshen Mishpat having the smallest segment. People weren't familiar in Choshen Mishpat. Besides the greatest Gedolim, nobody learned Choshen Mishpat. How many people learned Hilchos Rebbeis? One in a generation. And today you have hundreds and hundreds of Talmidei Chacham and Meflogim learning any mikzoya b'Torah. So the kollel world is amazing, and it's a blessing to our generation. But we need to find the right balance. Working is not a b'di'evet. Learning in kollel is amazing. It's a great zchus. Ashrei. Mi shebo lakam v'talmudoi biyodoi. But those that work and provide for their families do not in any way need to feel inferior. You're doing what your forefathers did in every generation since Matan Torah. How do we infuse Avodas Hashem into your workplace? How could we bring about a feeling in which a person doesn't feel 8 hours of my day is spent on nothing, and an hour and a half in the evening is dedicated to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? So the Rambam in Chesdayis speaks about one little posuk. B'chol drechechu de'eyu v'hu yiyasher orchesecha. The Rambam doesn't quote the Gemara, but the Gemara at the end of Bracha says, Eizo mikro koton, a posuk koton, shekol gufei Torah tluyim bo. B'chol drechechu de'eyu v'hu yiyasher orchesecha. And maybe al pi Chassidus I would stress gufei Torah, not nishmas Torah, but gufei Torah. And the Rambam says, what's the interpretation of B'chol drechechu de'eyu v'hu yiyasher orchesecha? Shiu kol masecho l'shem shamayim. Once again, a Mishnah in Weiss. And the Rambam's interpretation, kol masecho means maseh rishut. Doesn't mean davening and learning. Doesn't mean tzitzis and tefillin. It means whatever you do should be l'shem shamayim. When a person eats and drinks, fundamentally, you need to feel. It doesn't need to be your conscious thought, but you need to feel, I want to be healthy. So I have a balanced diet? I don't. And I'm ashamed to say, I don't. But I should. I want to be healthy because I want to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I want to have a long life, a healthy life, and I want to dedicate my life. So when you work, that same fundamental feeling. I want to be honest in my job. I want to make money. I want to provide for my family, which is a mitzvah. I want to provide for my community, which is a mitzvah. And sometimes, if you're blessed, your work could also be working in supporting Torah. Because the Torah world is so big today, many people are in marketing, in finance, in administration, directly associated with Avodas Hashem. But even if you're not, your job has nothing to do with Avodas Hashem, it depends on your attitude, it depends on your feeling. And if you feel every moment, the reason I am in this job is because, yes, I want to make money, and that's legitimate, but why do I need money? You know, I want to be machanach my children on a Talmud Torah. I want to support Almonas V'Yasayim. I want to support the local yeshiva. Then your work is part of your avodas Hashem. And the Rambam writes, Nimtzo ha'hoylech b'derech hazeh oived es Hashem kol yomav. So all your day and all night becomes avodas Hashem. So as I spoke originally with Reb Yaakov, right? I will give a short presentation. I will have some time for more practical questions and answers. So I just wanted to share with you some fundamentals about this sheet that was presented to me. I do want to relate to the last question. When interacting with non-Jews for networking, business development, particularly during conferences, what are good gedorim to set for oneself? Should one strive to develop personal relationships with non-Jews, secular Jews, in order to create a Kiddush Hashem, or stay away, keep it professional? And once again, it's all about balance. And it's all about the individual. No two people are the same. So in the Boter Chinuch, some of the instructions the girls get are just utterly ridiculous. So when you work in a place, never use your first name. What's your name? Geveret Hoffman, which is somewhat awkward. And if anybody offers you a cracker or a snack or a drink, you don't take. And this crazy feeling that everybody is after you and everybody wants you is sick. It's not realistic. But you do need, be nice to people. You're allowed to smile, which is a chiddush. You're allowed to smile, be nice to people. You have a name. And when people ask you, what's your name? Only in the yeshiva world do they use family names. In the yeshiva world, the literacy yeshiva world, you don't have a Jewish name, which is crazy. Marmustein, Hoffman, they don't use Jewish names. But in the normal world, your name is your first name, not your family name. When you work with non-Jews or with secular Jews, you have huge opportunities for Kiddush Hashem and for Chilul Hashem. Kiddush Hashem means two different things. Mesiras Nefesh, giving away your life, and that is only B'fnei Asorim Yisrael. But just sanctifying God's name, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name, with the way you act and interact is even between Goyim. We see that in Hilchas Hashavas Aveda, in Hilchas Genei V'Gzeila, and so many Sifrim in Shulchan Aruch, that even dealing with non-Jews, you have a mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem. I have a daughter, my oldest daughter, for the 25 years is working with the police force. She's not a cop. She doesn't wear a uniform. She is a civilian, but she develops top secret computer systems for the intelligence community in Israel. And just this week she received an award, which was a huge Kiddush Hashem. When she took this job, she was the only Haredi. Today, 70% of those under her are Haredim. And she's nice. People admire her in the unit. And it's a huge Kiddush Hashem. And in this country, it is so important with all that's going on and all the strife and friction between the Haredi community and the secular community. This is so important. So this question is very individual. Don't become intimate ever, but be nice, be polite, and have a positive interaction with secular Jews or even Goyim, whether you're a man or a woman. It's more sensitive with women than with men, but it's also sensitive between men and the other gender that's on the other side. So in all these shilas, we're not dealing with Hilchas Natilas Yadayim or Shir Matzah or the Shir Morer or exactly what is the definition of Ben Hashmoshes. So in these questions, it's impossible to give a definitive psak, but it's more about attitudes, which I think I try to convey a very clear message. Specifics?
Chesed. You have a Seder in the morning, and then you have to make a decision how often that gets canceled for...
Okay, so Menachem is complicated things because I said there are three aspects that we need to balance out. Talmud Torah, family, profession. What about Chesed? And that is number 4. Chesed is important. So there's a Medrash Tanchum in Parshas Masa, an amazing Medrash. Rav Asi was crying before his demise. And the Talmidim was standing around his deathbed. And they asked Rebbe, you of all people, why are you crying? What do you have to be worried about? You are the greatest masmid in the generation. Is there any Torah you didn't learn? Is there any Torah you didn't teach? You weren't even involved in community affairs because you were learning all the time. And Rav Asi says, that is why I am worried, because I was not involved in community affairs. And that's why I'm crying. I should have been more involved. I should have been nice about Olam Chaveiroi. So yes, I spend a lot of time with people, as some of you might know, and too much time. I have Kabbalat Kal in the morning. I thought it was going to take half hour. Sometimes I sit from 8 to 11, and people just come in and out, and it's too much for me, and I don't know how to stop it. But I do feel that when a person comes into my room troubled and he leaves my room with a smile on his face, I think that I did something important and I accomplished something. So yes, you need to be involved in chesed. So Reb Itzel Mivolozhin published the Nefesh HaChaim. The Nefesh HaChaim did not come out during the lifetime of Reb Chaim. And he writes in his introduction that my father used to give me musar. I think too much about myself and too little about others. That's what he writes. This is a testament to Reb Itzel's greatness, because let me make this very clear. If anybody would say that about me, I would not write it in the Akdome to my sefer. I would keep it to myself. We assume that Reb Itzel Mivolozhin, like any other Gadol Yisrael, cared about people, but obviously not enough to his father's expectations. And he writes, my father used to say, none of us is here for himself, neither in Gashmias, not even in Ruchnias. We are all here for each other. So Chesed is part of our obligation. And it just makes the balance more difficult. And nobody is perfect. There is no magic formula how to balance this all out. Maybe somebody is going to come up someday with an algorithm to work this out. I don't think so, because it has so much to do with the individual. Not all our children were destined to be scholars. We are realistic people. We're fathers of children. Not all our children were destined to be scholars. And that is one of the flaws in our present-day system, because we expect all our kids to come out exactly in the same mold, and it's an unrealistic expectation. So some of our kids should be far more involved in chesed, and others should be more into learning, but everybody needs to be kaveh to Torah on one hand and engaged in chesed on the other.
The Rav mentioned that frame the whole discussion with regards to it's a sort of gray area, and attitudes are very important. So can maybe Rav talk about having a Rebbe and what type of das Torah, or the place of what conversation should be gone through a Rebbe and which can be made in a person's own cheshbon.
Yeah. So once again, I think a Selech Horav is important. It is not as important today as it was in the days of yore, when Devoram Shabbat Torah Shayla Kaisvan. So once the entire transmission of Torah from one generation for the other was just a relationship between a Rav and a Talmud. Today, most of our learning is Sforim, and when you ask a person who's your Rebbe, he could just point, these are my Rebbeim, but it still is important. Not only for Moira Hoiroa, because to understand the nuances of Psak, you need to have a Rebbe. I think even in day-to-day life, it's important to have a Rebbe. But I think the concept of das Torah has been taken to an extreme, and people just feel more comfortable if they don't need to make decisions. But you do need to make decisions in life, and many decisions could be made only by you and your family. And the two words maybe I use more than any others when people come to me would be, I don't know. Because so many decisions in life are so personal. It depends on you and your wife and your children. But we do believe, and we are to believe, that a person that spent all his life learning Torah does achieve a certain level of wisdom and insight. And if he's basically intelligent. So I think it's important to have a Rebbe, a Torah mentor, but it is also important to choose. And nobody can impose on you who is your Gadol. And your Gadol doesn't necessarily need to be the one that has a newspaper behind him or a political party behind him. But it is important to have a personal relationship with a great Talmid Chacham. He's not going to make all the decisions for you. And if he claims to make all the decisions for you, look for another Rebbe. He's not supposed to make all the decisions for you. The Rambam has such a powerful line in one of his letters. La'olam al yashlech odam datoi achorav, ki ha'inayim hem lefanim, velo ma'achor. What a powerful line. He writes, never neglect your mind, because your eyes are on the front of your face, not on the back of your head. If we would have eyes just to see where we have been taken, then our eyes should have been in the back of our heads to see where we have been taken. If your eyes are in the front of your face, your eyes were given to you to choose where to go. I think it is important to have a personal relationship with a Rebbe. Choose your Rebbeim carefully, just like you choose your business partners carefully, and understand your Rebbe is here for Torah, for Musar, for an additional level of understanding. He's not supposed to make your personal decisions, when to take a vacation with your family, where to go, where to invest. Never ask a Talmud Chacham where to invest. If you would know my track record, you wouldn't come close to my room. I could say like Ibn Ezra. Ibn Ezra wrote, if I would sell Tachrichim, people would live forever. That's the line that the Ibn Ezra wrote. And I would sell candles, the sun would never go down. That's the Ibn Ezra. I could almost say the same. Your Rebbe is not here to decide for you where to invest. But if you do have a certain doubt, you could discuss with him and see whether he responds sensibly. And if his response is not sensible, don't listen to his advice. It's not like asking a Shaila in Hilchos Shabbos or in Hilchos Yichud or in any other area of Torah.
Question?
One more? Because I have these choshev. Yeah.
I remember when I was in yeshiva a bunch of years ago, often feeling a sense of anxiety before I do approach a Rebbe. Sometimes it preventing me from actually, whether it be, oh, he's busy, or I don't really have such a big problem.
I wish people would feel more anxiety before they approach me. They don't seem to. I think that's wrong. And if you feel anxiety approaching your Rebbe's not doing his job properly. I think Rebbe should be available and accessible, and they should be there for their Talmidim.
Still a human being.
What?
Still a human being. He's allowed to have his own time also.
But many things in life, are not always subjective. Many things are subjective.
We want to talk a little about Shabbos and the place that should play when our busy weeks when we get to Shabbos so tired, but it's also...
So Shabbos is a Yom Menucha u'Kedusha. And on one hand, Shabbos is a Yom Menucha. And that means Shabbos was given to us also to rest. So I've been asked from an American community lately about scooters. So a person lives somewhere in the Midwest, and he says almost the entire community comes to Shul Shabbos on scooters. His Rebbe said you can't use that on Shabbos. And the question he came to ask me, if a person that uses a scooter on Shabbos, if he's menasech yain, if he could get an aliyah in Shul. So he said he's not menasech yain, you could give him an aliyah. How do we define uvdin dechoil? So one of my agdoras, any means of transportation would be considered uvdin dechoil. So 100 years ago, there was a controversy in Europe about bikes. Could you ride a bike? Some gedolim were matir, others aserd. So the pasuk says, "Shvu ish tachtav, al yetze ish mem koimei." So one of the fundamentals, it's not a mitzvah, but one of the fundamentals of Shabbos is Shabbos you're supposed to be home. Transportation is uvdin dechoil. So the Shoel HaMeshav 150 years ago deals with a tram. In many European cities, it was a tram, Rakevet HaKala. And in many cities, you didn't need to pay. It was a service that the municipality gave to you. Could you use that on Shabbos? You don't need to pay. You don't need to be metaltal. And the Shoel HaMeshav said, transportation is uvdin dechoil. And that is why these little tricycles, the three-wheelers that kids use, that's not a problem at all. Recreation is mutter. Transportation is also. Once upon a time, these scooters were more about recreation, but in the modern world, it has become a means of transportation. So I would say it's uvdin dechol. But you could still give an aliyah to a person that his Rov says you could use a scooter on Shabbos. So Shabbos on one hand is a Yom Menucha, and it's legitimate to rest on Shabbos. It is fundamentally, but Shabbos is also a Yom of Kedusha. And it is so important to infuse your Shabbos with Kedusha and spirituality. And in the middle of the week, you don't get to see your kids enough. Your kids are in school. By the time they come home, they're tired. By the time you come home, you're tired. Shabbos is a wonderful opportunity of learning with your children, spending more time with your children. So once again, everything we discussed today is all about balance, balancing out menucha and kedusha. It's all about balance.
Thank you, Rabbi, so much for taking the time to speak to us today.
Okay. Any purchase of Sforim, a dedication is included in the price. Kolter, it was a pleasure to see you all, and you should all have a beautiful Shabbos.